Last week, we took a look at how to successfully onboard your volunteer team. And today, we're going to follow that up by taking a deeper dive in how to train your volunteer team. That's what we're talking about today on the Ministry Coach Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ministry Coach Podcast, where we give you weekly tips and tactics to help you fast track the growth and health of your youth ministry. And today, this is part 2 of a 2-part series about leaders, training leaders, onboarding leaders. Actually, it's almost a 3-part series. If you go back to episode 11, where we did how to recruit the best volunteers, that really probably would have been part of this. So if you haven't heard that one, go back and check out episode 11, and I'm pretty sure it's episode 11. But that's how to get
Even if it's not, you'll love episode 11.
It's so good. So yeah, make sure you check out that one, how to recruit the right volunteers for your youth group. And then last week we did kind of, once you decided, okay, these are the people we're pursuing, let's onboard them, let's get them acclimated to the team and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so we kind of left off saying you want to do some training with them, but we didn't really go into what that training would be. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to give you some different sections that this person has gone through background checks. They filled out an application. They've turned in some references and you're ready to propose and
make it official.
Make it official. So you're going to sit down one-on-one with this person and do some training. I recommend 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. I said on the last episode, sometimes I feel like doing 2. So I condense it to 2. That's usually if I know the person already pretty well. But this is a great time to sit down, have one-on-one, and just get to know them. Because I think I mentioned also in the last episode, during program night or weekends, it's so hard to actually spend time with your leaders.
Crazy.
Yeah, because there's parents and students and program and problems that we have to solve. And at the end of the night, sometimes I'm like, I didn't even get to say hello to that person. So this is a great opportunity to do that. So with that in mind, go the 4 weeks. That would be great.
Speaking of hello, we forgot to introduce ourselves. You may already know, but my name is Jeff Lascola. This is my beautiful wife,
Kristen Lascola.
And make sure you guys hit subscribe and like and all that fun stuff that goes along with. I don't know. I can never get the whole spiel right. Like, subscribe, notifications, all that. Whatever it is, do it. Okay.
If you
know what you're doing.
Please.
And we would really appreciate it. And we hope you get a lot out of it.
They're ready for the meat.
I know. Let's go.
Shut up, people. All right. So number 1, you want to go over the do's and don'ts with them. Now, let's set a precedent that is, don't assume people know anything.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if they've had experience at another church or in another ministry or whatever, or if they're your best friend. Don't assume they know anything, because some of this stuff, especially to a youth ministry veteran such as yourself, you'll be like a doy, and it's just because we hear it all the time, but things need to be said. So lead with the foot that uncommunicated expectations will go unmet. And there's only one person to blame for that. It's you and me, because we're both in the same position. All right. So don't assume they know this. So go over the do's and don'ts with them on the first night. So this is when you want to talk about stuff like discipline, like what is appropriate and what is not with discipline in students. We tell them like, hey, discipline early and often, set like the tone for your group so that they don't walk all over you, especially if you work with middle schoolers. Yikes. Those 6th grade boys, man, woo, rough. But at the same time, there's more serious things like, hey, like when you're disciplining a student, never ever touch them, don't yell at them or put them down or belittle them. Give them some tips and techniques. Don't just assume your leaders know how to discipline. They're not in education. They're not pastors. They don't know what your expectation for discipline is, but tell them right off the bat what it is and empower them to do it. They might not think like, like I'm a leader. Okay, I can do this. This is also a time you want to talk to them about your talk sheet. I send out my talk sheet to my leaders every week before program. If you're not doing that, do that. They need time to prepare. So give them permission, like, hey, tailor this talk sheet. This is a jumping off point, but this is some questions to get you started, but tailor it to fit your group. I give my leaders permission to do that. And sometimes I'll have leaders like, you put too many questions on there. How am I supposed to get through them all? I'm like, whoever said you were supposed to get through them all? Oh, maybe I never told you you weren't supposed to. So that's why I say I give it to you early so that you can pick and choose some different ones. Like, hey, I definitely want to hit this.
Right. And if you know your group, this one's not going to work for them, or this one totally speaks to them. So you can weed those out before you're sitting there looking at it and like, oh shoot, I don't know what this even is.
Exactly. And I think some like really like responsible leaders are like, no, I have to go start to finish, and it's like, no, relax. This is just like a guide for you. So talk to them about the discussion sheet and your expectations for that. And then like logistic things like how to take attendance accurately, because that will make your job a lot easier. How to fill out a card for a new student, or how to get a new student registered if they have one in their small group. Make sure that they know how to go through that stuff. And then talk to them about things in terms of leading small groups of, hey, here's what you do with a student who is like a dominator, who wants to answer every question and these long stories that like are totally irrelevant. And, talk to them about your time expectations. Some leaders think, well, as long as it's good discussion, we can go 45 an hour, and meanwhile, parents are like, where the heck is my kid? So make sure it's like, hey, no matter where you're at, you've got to be out by 8:55. That's what I tell my leaders. And if they aren't, I go and open the door like, hey, you're going to hate me, but you'll forgive me. The parents won't. So I have to get them out on time. It's a school night. So I'm really a stickler about that. And then talk to them about their role in the small group of like, hey, I've had to tell leaders, this isn't another sermon. So don't feel like you have to lecture the whole time and give another sermon. This is you leading great discussion and the art of asking questions. So these are all great things that's a good starting point. So then maybe within this same week or the next time, then you're going to move on to like expectations. So when you are a small group leader and you show up on our program night.
Stop you for a second though. When you're throwing them in, they're not like, here's your small group, you're by yourself and doing it. They're with somebody else, correct?
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, I just assumed everyone knew that.
See?
Jeff, you've been listening.
I have, and I also went through the training. Remember, I used to be a volunteer before. You fired me.
Take care of my kid. Take care of my baby while I'm at youth group.
But you kind of go alongside another person just to see like who obviously knows what they're doing, so that you don't throw them to the wolves. Literally wolves.
Anyways, so last week we talked about, they observe for 4 weeks. So they've kind of got some relational clout going, but all of my small groups have 2 leaders, and that like if this is a like fresh leader, I'll usually try to pair them with someone who's been around for
vet.
Yes, been around for a while and all of that. So they partner with them. They're not just like, here I am leading a small group. They're now kind of leading alongside this veteran leader to kind of learn the ropes a little bit more. That's a good point.
Depending where you're at, because you may think, I don't have enough leaders to spare, doubling up. If you can, at least for the new people, if you yourself can go in.
That's what I was going to say. We didn't even plan this. I call that coach leading.
All right. Mental exercise, trying to come up with the exact same word that I'm thinking.
We did not plan this.
3, 2, 1, go. Taco. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, let's try it again. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Freckle. Oh, wow. 3 for 3.
All right, let's try.
3, 2, 1. Booger snot. Good. All right, now that we've gotten past that, married for 9 years. High five.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing.
So if you can sit through with them, that would help.
So what I was going to say is I call that coach leading, and that is so awesome. I've done that with so many leaders, and they learn how like the art of
what better way to set an
question
expectation
asking.
is showing them what you want them to do, right?
Exactly. So do it if you can. Okay, so the expectation of, all right, I'm a small group leader. I'm showing up to your program. What do you want me to do? So now you're going to deliver like, here's my expectation for how my leaders act. So we tell our leaders, we expect you to initiate conversation with every single person in your small group that night, because if like our group is too big for like me or even one other leader to like, hey, let's talk to every kid. But if every kid is in a small group and every small group leader talks to every kid got talked to by an adult that night.
Yeah.
So I said, if you know students in other groups or you have your little posse over here, that's fine. After all your kids have been taken care of, greeted, hello, asked questions, initiated, then you can move on to other kids. The other expectation, we talked a little bit about this, is that you prepare for your small group. The worst thing small group leaders can do is get in there, and the first time they're seeing your discussion sheet is when their small group starts. That is going to make for some really choppy conversation without a really clear end goal and plan in mind. So this is where you can come in and give them the talk sheet as early as possible. So my program night is on Tuesdays. I try to give them the talk sheet by Thursday, sometimes Friday. If you guys are listening, I know you're going to say, Kristen, nuh-uh, sometimes it's Saturday. I know. But the goal is always Thursday to get it to them so that they have plenty of time to prepare, make notes, ask questions. And then the other expectations is that they keep track of their students. So the way that this looks is communicate with students outside of groups. So whether that's a DM, whether that's a text, I used to literally sit there and dial numbers every Tuesday before my small group. And their parents would answer and I'd be like, hi, this is Kristen from North Coast. Is Bethany home? And then it would be Bethany. Hello. Hi, Bethany. What are you doing? Homework. Oh, are you coming to small group tonight? Yeah. Okay, can't wait to see you. And I would do it every single week. But now you can text and copy and paste. It's fine. No, just kidding. But the expectation is that they keep track of their students outside of program. They keep track of them inside a program by taking accurate attendance and following up with visitors. So I tell my small group leaders, if a student is absent, then you need to go out of your way to find out why. Hey, we missed you on Tuesday night. Where were you? Can't wait to see you next week. We don't want anyone to become invisible. And the small group leader is the vehicle for that to happen because they're the only ones who knows who's missing. Right. I don't know. I can't follow up with students, but they know. And that's why small group model is so amazing. Okay. So then you're going to move on to the never evers. Like, this is a time where no
firearms, no drugs, that type of stuff.
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is
Don't assume anything.
I know. I was like, you're going to make me eat my own words of like, duh, Jeff, don't bring a gun to youth group. But no, this is more of like your church specifically. Like these are kind of like where you can push policy a little bit of like, hey, our church has a policy that you can't blah, 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 blah. And that's when this would be a good time to tell them, if you have certain rules and policies, this is just like that list of like, hey, let's be crystal clear, never do these things. For example, one of ours is you can never, ever, ever, ever be alone with a student of the opposite sex. Now, I meet with students of the opposite sex all the time because I am a pastor to middle schoolers of both genders, right? So if I need to meet with a student one-on-one who's of the opposite gender, we do it in the office and we have a conference room that's clear. It's fine. No big deal. But my small group leaders, there's no reason why they would need to meet with someone of the opposite sex because they lead only students of that gender. If there's a student having a problem that's of the opposite gender of them, they can send them to me and I can meet with them. And that's just to protect them and the students, I guess. So, you would even want to caution them, like in this day and age, like I used to never really say this, but even being alone with students of the same gender, just being alone with students in general, using really strong caution of picking them up and taking them home. And I always prefer that there be more than one student or leader in the car, like the one-on-one thing. You can fill in the blank with your specific policy on that. I tell them never ever talk negatively about a junior high program or leader to a student. I say, if you absolutely hated the game and it was a complete failure and camp sucked, come to me and vent away. Just don't say it to the students, because then they'll be like, yeah, and we didn't even have this. And then they'll tell their parents, and all of a sudden it just kind of gets out of control. So tell them, hey, staff sticks together. We are going to put up a positive front, and then we're going to vent behind closed doors if there's something that needs to be fixed. But we don't bring problems to students.
Yeah, that breeds toxicity and
it does.
Cancer in your group.
Yeah. And students love leaders. So whatever they say, it's like,
totally.
yeah, I know. Well, he said this, and they get all riled up, and it's just unhealthy. Tell your leaders to be very careful using questionable humor with students. So like if there's something really funny from a movie that they shouldn't be seeing, we don't want to quote it. We don't want to talk about it. Be very careful with the jokes. Don't ever watch like a rated R movie with a student or anything like that. And then so we talked about the discipline thing, like never touch a student. I've had my leaders get a little too physical and rough just playing. So like boys in the water wrestling and picking each other up and throwing them, or like leaders, like we play this game where they have to tag them, but like they were smacking them like too hard with these things. And so just telling them like, hey, like when we're playing around, like I don't have a problem with horseplay, rough kind of fun stuff, but just be careful, because remember, these are still children, so they can get hurt. Don't treat them the way you would treat your other 22-year-old friend. Right. So
accidents happen, but you need to be cautious, because how are you going to explain? How did you get that black eye? Well, we were playing this game and later punch me.
Yeah, just to be careful with students, and then respecting the facilities. So, junior hires are pretty hard on the facilities.
That's an understatement.
Woo! So making sure that leaders are doing their absolute best to leave the rooms the way they found them. Like, hey, clean up the trash, put the chairs away. Don't let them play with the toys if you're using a children's classroom. Just making sure leaders have this expectation of like, this isn't a free for all. Yeah. You are responsible for the facility you're using, and that's going to help you in your job a whole lot. And there's other things that go under the never, ever, don't ever do's. I just highlighted a few, but you might want to fill that in with, you might be like, how in the world did she not say this or that? Something that comes to mind for you. This is just a jumping off point, and you can fill in the gaps. Speaking
of maintaining the facilities or things like that, I was driving students to the beach or something, and we have a 8-passenger van, and there was a group of boys in there, and they were just being crazy and breaking things, because that van is so beat up. It's so sad. Yeah. But anyways, I said, hey, don't wreck my van. And the kid said, wait, this isn't the church's, this is yours? And I thought,
as if it mattered.
I was like, what would that change? Like, oh, if it's the church's, go ahead and destroy it. If it's his, well, maybe not. Or it would have been the opposite. Like, oh, if it's yours, we'll just destroy everything.
They're so destructive.
Yeah. There's no more working cup holders in that van because of junior hires.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the things that I have found in classrooms, in cars, would haunt you. It's disgusting. They just are so destructive.
I have trash and there's nothing near me, so I'm just going to throw it where my nearest direction.
Put it in the seat, like little, what do you call it? Seat pockets?
Yeah, where like the magazines go. Like, I'll just stuff my chocolate in there and let it melt. No, they'd eat all the chocolate, but you know what we're talking about.
Trash. Okay, so then you want to move on to the needs of a small group leader. So these are, you might want to touch on social media. And that is an episode we did, I don't know.
2 episodes
ago. So, and this is where you really want to be very honest with your expectations for their own spiritual life. So leaders sometimes are great at serving, but they're not great at leading themselves. And so you want to make sure, hey, are you in a Bible study yourself? Are you in a growth group? What service are you attending? How are you growing spiritually? What are you reading or listening to right now? So we want to make sure our leaders are growing themselves, and we want to make sure they know how important that is. Talk to them about their participation level and that this is a need, and that when they show up, it's go time. Like they need, if they are able to play the games, if they aren't able, cheer on or help facilitate or keep score or pick the next person who's, up to bat or whatever. Participate in worship alongside your students. When the speaker is asking for participation, participate. If we're having an ice cream party, go get it and help serve. Like, we don't want wallflowers is basically what we're saying. When you're here, we're doing ministry together, and then let's hang out after. But, and I'm always torn here because my leaders are such good friends, and I'm like, oh, how special. I want you guys to enjoy each other on a Tuesday night. But then I'm like, hello, like the kids are going crazy. We need some help over here. The other thing you want to talk to them about is their commitment. I tell them, hey, I understand life happens. You're not going to come every single Tuesday for 52 weeks out of the year, right? But what I do expect is that you communicate with me and you don't just not show up. If something comes up, I'm totally understanding, but you just need to keep me in the loop. And I ask for at least a 6-month commitment right off the bat. Like, this isn't just like, I don't know, like pop in whenever I feel like it. Like, hey, when you're signing up, you're here. Team player, I talk to them about that. And then talk to them about like leader versus friend with the student. Like, remember, you are in a position of leadership. Your friendship with students is important, but it's not primary. So helping them understand the difference there is really helpful. And then we move on to how they interact with students. So we talk to them about affirmation. How do you affirm a student? Well, it's one thing to just say like, oh, I like your hat, Jeff. Like, you look so cute tonight. You're like, thanks. And
that's how I always sound. So
thanks. But it's quite another to be like, you know what? You are the most generous person I have ever met. Like, and then just pretend he's generous.
Right.
And
I was like, are you being serious or not? Oh.
Did it feel good though?
It did. True or not.
See what I did there?
So lie or tell the truth. It feels good.
Yeah, we want to teach them how to affirm students' character, because students, what I realized years ago is that they are very not self-aware.
Totally.
Like, I remember pulling this one kid aside. Remember Noah? He was so cute.
Which Noah?
Noah C.
You can't. Okay, yeah.
And I was like, you are so friendly. Like, you are so good with new people. Like, when new people come, can I just like send them to you, or you could save them a seat? He's like, totally. And then he came up to me like a couple weeks later. He's like, nobody's ever said that to me before. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, like I didn't know that about myself. I just thought that's just how I act. I didn't know it was special. And so it's just so cool when leaders can pull, like, because students think they aren't good enough. They're not smart enough. They're not pretty enough. They're not thin enough. They're not, they just see everything wrong with themselves. And so when an adult who cares about them knows how to pull out like character and show them, no, this is who you are, like appreciate that. It's so incredible.
Adults aren't that far off from the same thing.
Yeah, totally. I know, it's true, but we can at least do that for our students.
Yeah, totally.
So you teach them how to affirm students, and then you teach them how to get below the surface with students. So, obviously we need to be able to make small talk, like, hey, how's your weekend? What did you do? But then teach them also how to ask really good questions. And this could be in the context of small group or just hanging out before or after group, but avoiding yes or no questions, because in your small group, if you ask a yes or no question, they say yes or no. And then it's like time to move on.
Junior high, they'll figure out a way to not. Like, do you prefer chocolate or vanilla? I don't eat ice cream. Okay, do you like tacos or hamburgers? I'm a vegan. You're just going to say the opposite.
I love you, vegan.
There's always that answer that like...
I know. They'll try to be like little smart Alex, but teach them how, like, the art of question asking. So avoiding yes or no. not just asking questions that have to do with fact, but also feeling. So like God so loved the world that he what, but asking them questions of like, okay, so what does that show us about the character of God that he gave? Like he loved, so he gave. Like, let's draw a connection there. How does that make you feel to know he loves you? Like just asking like lead them through those feelings and facts. And then this one's my favorite because this is a pet peeve of mine in general, is to do a lot more asking than telling. Again, make sure leaders know this isn't time for you to shine of like, I've prepared a 3-point lecture on the origin of life. And it's like, well, okay, we've already had the sermon and now it's time for you.
And it was okay.
It was like,
it was decent.
C minus. Was that a jab, Jeff?
I'm saying hypothetically, it was okay.
Funny man over here, huh? When is the last time you saw me speak? Like, you don't ever come to my stuff anymore.
I have to edit your when you do speaking for other.
That's true.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
So I can say it sucks. I know it sucks. I
know for a fact they're mediocre. No, that's not true. You're very, very gifted. Very gifted. Such a speaker. A teacher's heart, as they say.
Okay, stop. All right. So where was I? Asking versus telling?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not time for another sermon.
Right.
We've already had the sermon. It was horrible. That's
said
what
it was mediocre.
Bink. This is time now for your leaders to help now them digest what they've just heard and make sense of it, ask questions, and lead it to an actual point. Like, what do we do with this? It's like where the life application stuff comes in. And then get them comfortable with different things they might experience in small group. Like, hey, silence is okay, guys. Don't feel like you have to fill it in. And another thing you want to make sure you tell them is you don't have to have all the answers. I think sometimes small group leaders feel like, oh my gosh, like,
what if they ask me a question?
I know that I don't know the answer to. And number one, that rarely happens. But number two, if it does, and I've even done this, when I first started in ministry, I remember these 2 7th graders were like, what does blasphemy of the Holy Spirit mean? I was like, ha, ha, ha. And so I was like, you know what? I vaguely know, but let me get a really precise answer for you and let's talk about it next week. And that is a perfectly good answer to say, I don't want to steer you wrong. I think that's a great question. I want some clarity on it. So like give that tool to your leaders of like, you aren't like supposed to be this like guru of spiritual knowledge. Like you are supposed to walk alongside them. So like just take that pressure off of them and give them some tools for that. I've had leaders just call me or, hey, come here. We want to ask you a question. So you can say, I'm available like as a resource if you need me. You can encourage them, hey, like make sure your students are bringing their Bibles. I wish this one went without saying, but lastly, don't goof off every week. Sometimes I feel like leaders are like, well, the kids like really weren't into the message. So we just like played signs or something. And I'm like, oh, like I'll let that go like maybe 1 week.
We did 2 years worth of relationship building by playing games.
Yeah.
And then they graduated.
It's like, okay, good. But like, this is probably the only church they're going to get all week. So like make it count. So tell them like, hey, like let them get their wiggles out and hang out. And then I always say prayer is a great transition. Just say, all right, guys, we're going to pray. And after we pray, we're going to dive in. And the expectation is that you participate in the right way after that. And if you don't, if you're a distraction, then you could go hang out with Kristen and, we'll give you another try next week. So you can be really nice about it. But, here's what breaks my heart is when students in the group are frustrated that they're not getting anything done. And the small group leader's like, well, they were all just wanting to have fun. No, because there are some kids that are like, this sucks. I brought my Bible. I was ready to go. I wanted to learn. I email the talk sheet to the parents. So sometimes those kids even are like, I prepared, like I knew some of the questions ahead of time. And they feel so disappointed, like, well, this kid just ruined it for all of us. Or so make sure the leaders are like not just letting this be a free for all, but that they are incorporating structure. And your younger leaders are going to need the most help with this. So the fresh out of high school or the seniors, they're going to have a really hard time, most of them, with gaining control of their group. So tell them exactly what you want them to do to maintain control or when control is lost. Give them some step-by-steps. I usually say a warning to the disruptive kid, and because you've already said we're transitioning, that's the cue. If you mess up after that, that's okay. We'll give you a warning. After that, it's see you later. They come and see me. I have a conversation with the student of like, hey, what happened? Well, I didn't even do anything. It's like, okay, yeah, because leaders just send you out for no reason. And then I say, well, you know what? I really want you to contribute to your group in the right kind of way. So can you only say things that are helpful? Remember, this isn't the you show. This is you learning how to be a part of a small group. Do you want to give it another try? Yes. And they do. And, we work with them because I always say success for middle school ministry is middle schoolers learning how to be a part of a small group and making real contributions. So let's just get them, we want them to learn something spiritual, but that is half the battle, is getting them to sit, to listen to someone else speak, to have a thought, to contribute that thought at the right time so that it's edifying for everybody. That's a skill they're going to need for the rest of their Christian life. So they're starting with us, and we need to make sure they're equipped for that. And then the very, very last, we'll end here. I know this has been so much. I hope you guys have been writing this down. I should have said that at the beginning, that we're going to it's drinking out of a fire hose. We're going to throw a lot at you tonight, is to help your leaders understand the big picture. So what I usually end with is saying, look, guys, this is going to lack immediate feedback. There's going to be weeks. Just be so real with them and say, there's going to be weeks where you're like, what the heck am I doing with my life? I give up 2 hours on a weeknight to be with these psychos, and they don't even thank me, and they're so rude. And I don't think they heard anything I said, and blah, and they're going to have those nights that are so frustrating. Number one, your leaders need to be paid with relationship from you, but also just set them up for, that will happen. But let's look at the big picture, that most people, if they don't accept Christ by the time they're 13, this is what studies show, that they're probably not going to accept Christ. Wow. It usually happens by the age of 13. That's when they're most receptive to the gospel. And a lot of times the fruit of character that we're looking for happens in high school. But guess who did all the groundbreaking, all the watering, all the seed planting, all the pleading with the seed, all the patience? It was us in middle school. High school ministry, if you're listening, I love you. But a lot of
You're welcome.
You're welcome. But a lot of times it happens in middle school is we had to do so much hard groundbreaking to get the fruit in 9th through 12th grade and hopefully on to college. So tell your middle schoolers, listen, this has been called the hardest ministry in the church because it's sometimes you feel like you're herding cats.
Oh, totally.
And you're like, what significance do I even have in life? You just feel so defeated sometimes. These kids could care less, but tell them to hang in there. So check in with them often.
Are you talking about the volunteers? Or are you talking about the youth pastors? Because I feel like it could go either way, or every week it's I quit.
I'm so exposed.
I can't do this anymore.
Well, I feel that way. So I can only, and I'm getting paid. So I'm going to keep showing up. But I can't imagine. I can, because I was a volunteer of just showing up. And I remember these girls are brats. What the heck? But I loved my youth pastor, and she was awesome. And she was hang in there. And she would even go to bat for me of hey, girls, be nice, to your small group leader, but I realized that to see real fruit, you have to be in it for the long haul. You're not going to see fruit in 6 months. So the longer you stay, the more fruit that you see, the more you pour in, the more you'll get out. All those things that leaders need to know so that they can fight off discouragement, especially if they're new. So I know that was a lot. Break it up as you see fit into different weeks and conversations. Drip it in constantly with your leaders. Start them off on the right foot and be a leader of leaders, I guess, is the bottom line.
Yeah, there's a lot of information, a lot of good stuff. Obviously, that's even like tip of the iceberg, though. As much as information as that is, I feel like it can be so much more in depth.
Yeah, this was actually abbreviated. But don't worry, we're not going to do part 4. It's over. It's over.
So if you guys haven't already seen part 1, which was last week, which would be episode, I believe, 31, make sure you guys check that out. And then going back to how to find the best volunteers for your ministry, again, was episode 11. So thank you guys so much for bearing with us, watching, listening, and we will see you guys next time.